Good evening, everyone. How are we feeling today on this, what is it, Wednesday? It's a Wednesday, yes. How are we feeling this Wednesday? Good. We are so glad to have you all here to join us, not only to, of course, share the amazing words of so many queer and trans Palestinian artists, authors, dream makers, memory makers, all of those, but we are also here on what happens to be the Nakba anniversary memorial date. As we all know, this did not start in 1948. It's gone a lot farther, but today is the day that we sit down, recognize, and think about our past. If you are Palestinian, your grandparents, your ancestors. If you're not, our fellow comrades on this day of great grief. And as we sit here, there is another thing causing great grief in our community. And we just want to take a moment of silence to recognize that. And if you guys don't mind joining me, just a moment. Thank you all. Just want to commemorate and make sure that we very much say that Palestinian children, mothers, fathers, women, men, people deserve to live. They deserve to live regardless of whether or not they are so quote-unquote innocent or not. This is another Nakba in the making. So now that we've said that, we're going to kind of switch gears a little bit and talk more about the joy and light of being Palestinian, of being trans and queer, and being part of such a magical community. With that, thank you. With that, I'm going to introduce our introducer for the evening. Her name is Asatza de la Cruz. And Asatza, if you don't mind coming on up.
As someone with extreme social anxiety, I keep getting myself in situations where I have to talk in front of people. Yeah. But I couldn't pass up the opportunity to introduce Yaffa today. Yaffa is an incredible organizer that came into my life, I guess, about a year-ish ago. I don't know, time's not real, especially in multiple genocides. But I was so grateful to have someone in our space that I felt really saw me, and that was something that I felt was missing in most queer and Muslim spaces, and I think that really sums up the type of person that Yaffa is in general. Yaffa is someone that goes out of their way to really see people for who they truly are, and to really recognize people that aren't recognized in other spaces, and I think a lot of that comes from just their being in general and a lot of the experiences that they've had, and so I am so grateful to share my dear friend with all of the rest of you tonight, Yaffa.
Hi everyone. How are y'all doing? Yeah, I feel it too. Yeah. First off, Asada, thank you for that beautiful introduction. I love putting people on the spot, right before. And I was like, Asada, do you want to introduce me? You do. Great. Fantastic. That's going to become my new bio, though. I'm so excited to be here with you all. It's an incredibly heavy day. I've been reflecting on it all day, and initially I was supposed to be doing a 3-hour training earlier today, and I was on the train here from New York, and I was like, actually, no, we're not going to do things today. We're just going to take time, just be in this moment, in today, because even though Nakba Day has happened for 31 years in my life, and this is the 76th year, this is the first year that it actually has national and international attention. Right? And I know different communities have been talking about it for a really long time, but it's so different when someone actually messages you and says I'm sending you love today. That's never happened before. And so it's both where it's the most visible and it almost feels like the first real one, if that makes sense. And also at the same time, of like it felt like 31 years was just gaslighting, right? Of knowing that this is a thing that's happening and also, wait, is it happening? Right? Of this dissonance that happens within society where when you're in pain on your own, it almost feels like the pain itself is not real. And it's like, oh wait, did I invent this? And this year just feels like things are coming together in beautiful, beautiful ways and also in really heartbreaking ways. And really reflecting on how, for me, like I've been talking about the last 7 months, that the Nakba did not happen over 24 hours. It wasn't just May 15th, 76 years ago, all of a sudden 800,000 Palestinians decided to just leave their homes. That's not when it started, right? Hundreds of thousands had left before that day. And an incalculable amount of people were killed before that day, over 30 years, right? And people talk about it as if like people just one day on a Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever day it was, were just like, let's just leave. Let's go somewhere else. And it's like, no, this is 30 years of brutality by the British and Zionists at the same time. And so I really just want to honor that. And also, I'm so excited to be here with you all because what better day to talk about utopia if not on the day that we actually commemorate, even though it didn't start on this day, this was still a huge... Can y'all still hear me? Yeah, something happened. And so even though it didn't start, wait, can y'all hear it? Sort of. Wait, is this better? Is it getting there? Okay. Now it's good. All right, cool. And so even though Nakba Day did not start anything, it's still a big day. And for me, I try to find. I don't know if the mic is it like good? Is it still working? We're good? Okay. So. One sec. Thank you. Okay, cool. Thank you. All right. Is this better? Hello.
Technology is not on our side. I think they might be Zionists.
Yes, definitely. Cool. Hello? I feel like that worked, but is it coming in and out? Talk to your neighbors for a second. Say hi to someone you don't know. Is this better? Can y'all hear me? No, still. Is this good? Is that better? Is this still going? Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay, awesome. It sounds like it's working. Wonderful. So as I was saying, I feel like this is the perfect day to really talk about utopia. Talk about what it means to be in a free Falasteen. And so for the rest of today's conversation, it's really just going to be about that. I feel like if you're here, you generally know that genocide is happening. You don't need to be told, let me tell you all the numbers, let me tell you all of the little things that are happening, because y'all already know them. that was kind of the idea behind this fabulous book. So INARA was birthed a few months after October 7th started, around New Year's really, where as I was seeing so much hopelessness and devastation within communities, I was like, I really want queer and trans Palestinians to be the ones envisioning what a free Falasteen looks like. For the most marginalized Palestinians to be the ones to say, this is actually what we're fighting for. This is where we're heading to. This is where we're going to get to. This is what it feels like. And so decided to do this work, and magically 3 months later, it ended up being published with 18 queer and trans Palestinians. I know, we're amazing. Yeah, y'all, the things that like the most marginalized can do, like, it's just incredible. If you know anything about publishing, you know you don't publish an anthology in 3 months. You don't publish really anything in 3 months. It takes years before anything can be, and yet here we are. And it was such a beautiful work to be exploring and working with the 17 other queer and trans Palestinians from around the world, some in Falasteen, many in the diaspora, all over the place, and just allowing people to explore what a free Falasteen meant to them. And one thing I'm incredibly proud of with INARA is that INARA is one of those rare books that's not written for the most privileged. INARA is not a book for people who don't understand Falasteen. It's not a book for people who don't understand anything about genocide, and they don't understand settler colonialism, and they don't understand anti-blackness and ableism. It's for us. It was written by queer and trans Palestinians, for queer and trans Palestinians first and foremost, and everybody who already gets it. So it's not a 101, it's not even a 201, it's not even a 501. It's like, if you don't get it yet, this isn't for you. And so I tell people, if you have people in your lives that still don't understand that genocide is a thing, and settler colonialism is a thing, and so on and so forth, don't give them INARA. It's not for them. It's a book for us. And so it's a book that actually rarely ever mentions the genocide, because we know the genocide is happening. We don't need to be told again and again and again. So I'm going to start off with reading a quick poem from the collection. All right, one sec. All right, so I'm going to read a poem by Maria Zrick, who is one of the contributors of the collection. And Maria lives in Falasteen. And this is one of the very few things that ever mentions today. So it's called Love After Return. I make love to you under a silent orange sky. No warplanes, no drones, no bombs. In a bedroom that knows freedom at last, under a rooftop that no one will ever take from us. After a century of martyrdom, after a century of birth, I make love to you upon a land we call ours. The empire's ashes, the sun sets untroubled. I make love to you, knowing the battle is over and every wave in the sea knows its rhythm and place. And you see me, all of me. Thank you. So that's one of the very, very, very few pieces that ever mentions the realities of today. And every piece from there just explores the present of a free Falasteen. And what made this collection so different than most collections is usually when you contribute to an anthology, usually you don't normally get paid. Usually it's like, okay, well, your name is going to be out there, so you're welcome. And then also, when you're contributing to an anthology, usually you have to have the piece like 95% there. Maybe 90% in some cases. With some final edits, right? Like maybe one brainstorming session, and then you're good to go. With this, we went through like 6 to 8 edits on average for every piece. And it wasn't because people weren't fabulous writers. People are incredible. But because if I ask you all what a free Falasteen looks like, how many of you would be able to really answer that question? Without talking about today. Without being like, a free Falasteen is no genocide. But that still centers today. That still centers genocide. And that's partially because the parts of our brain that think about utopia are not usually engaged. Right? The way our brain works is that we build shortcuts within like different neural pathways to allow us to process things on a daily basis. You have shortcuts right now. That's what allows you to be here in person, to listen to my words, to understand my words. You're not actually processing every single word. It's automatic. But if you think about it, however old you are, you have been conditioned to systemic oppression thinking from day one. I'm 31 years old, and I've had 31 years of conditioning into white supremacy, capitalism, patriarchy, ableism, all the things. And those things don't teach us about utopia. Those things are the opposite. And so to move towards utopia, we're actually rerouting those neural pathways to build new shortcuts. And so it was really beautiful working with people where someone will submit like 5 pages, and my comment is like, for the very last paragraph, this is an actual thing that happened multiple times, in the very last paragraph, being like, this is where your story begins. Because it was 4.5 pages about the violence of today, the realities of oppression, and just a final paragraph being like, and now we're in a better place, yay. And I'm like, no. Let's start with, we're in a better place. What does it feel like? What does it taste like? What does it look like? What's life in that way? And it was so beautiful witnessing the transformation with individuals, going from, again, 4.5 pages of just, here's today, to all of a sudden like 5 pages of just connection with land and people and love and growth and the most beautiful of things. So it was absolutely beautiful. And the other thing that we did is we allowed people to explore their own mediums in whatever ways that they wanted to do this. So it's not just poetry, it's not just short stories, it's not just essays, it's not just digital art, it's not just photographs. It is all the things. All of them. Which was really beautiful and inspiring, and probably half the contributors are also dyslexic, and so then working around some of that, of like, how do we write when we're usually not the people that things are written for? And so there's a piece about disability justice that has an audiobook component that has like a QR code with it that you could access and then listen to that piece being recited. So I'm going to read a little bit from one of my stories and then tell y'all a little bit more about it. I will find it eventually. It will happen. All right. So this is from one of the short stories that I have in this collection. And I have 3 poems and 2 short. Did it? No. I blame Zionists, obviously. Totally. They snuck in here beforehand, and messed up the sound system. We know it to be true. All right, so I'm going to be reading from page 37 if you have a copy of the book with you. I remember the first time I met them. I'm 3 and we're running around a wheat field, the place I am always home. The sun shines and their smile reflected in their eyes, and I'm so happy. They were there before, of course, but this was the moment I met them. Their overgrown bodies, so high up, so giant. I didn't understand mirrors yet, but they're a mirror. Into who I am and who I will become, their sperm creating me, but I didn't know any of that. I was just happy to play with the giant in this wheat field. Everywhere after that became the wheat field. Their smile, the first time I came home after planting trees with the other children, Mud holding on to me like he held on to me. They smile, and I already know I'm supposed to shower outside. He takes my hand and the cold water washes over me. They dry me outside, then carry me in, sitting me in the communal kitchen. The falafel is still hot when he puts it in front of me with a bit of hummus, my favorite. He's my favorite. One day, I'm scribbling on a notepad, some wheatgrass, and the sun's setting at home. That's beautiful, he says, leaning over me without me noticing. Yislamo, I say. Can you teach me? He asks, and I nod hesitantly. I don't know why I hesitate. I've taught before, but what if... I'm not even sure, as if these thoughts are someone else's. We do some lines together, my small hands fitting around his giant ones as I help him straighten them. His hands shake and he smiles every time. Then we do the grass, shooting up from the ground in the sun like a smile in the distance. We draw together every Jum'ah. Sometimes alone, sometimes Mama Kauthar joins, sometimes Baba Munthar joins. But it's always our space, their guests. We do this until his hands shake uncontrollably, and instead I draw for the both of us. Him telling me what to draw. A beach, the forest, a starry night. By then, I had been taking art classes with artists from all around. I drew him once, pretending to be drawing an elephant. He cried, I cried. It's the first day of the week. He's lying in bed on his side, still smiling at me. I'm 26. I draw a wheatgrass field and a sunset, the two of us staring towards it. His eyes are closed when I look up. We bury him that evening, the picture I drew of him hanging in the common space as the community comes and holds us. We're by the water, the cliffs of Yaffa behind us, the old city walls looming above. Down here we witness the waves crashing. There are 4 of us, we witness. Waves crashing, clouds forming and breaking apart. I notice every breath. I inhale life, exhale death, and repeat the cycle. I've been in this group ever since I could remember, but now it feels different after Baba died 2 weeks ago. I feel him with me. I breathe him in and honor his release with every exhale. I feel the warmth of the tears before I'm conscious of crying. What do you need? Maria asks from my right, barely whispering. To be physically held, I say, and they nod, their arms wrapping around me. I cry silently with the waves. After, I lie in the sand, allowing the smallest of particles to merge with my essence. They were once living stone, now they are living sand. I wonder what type of living and dying Baba is. I smile as the water reaches me in that moment, rolling my eyes and then start laughing. Of course, you're the waves, both embracing and letting go in a perfect balance. I am wheatgrass, dancing in the wind, and he's always been the waves. Thank you. So that's a short part of that story. And if you couldn't tell, that's the cover. So that's the story of the cover. So one thing that I love thinking of when I think of a free Palestine, when I think of utopia, I obviously think of a world free of systemic oppression, right? A world where none of this nonsense is here, where systems of oppression have aged out. They just need to go. We're bored of them at this point. But I also think about all the things that we view as part of our day-to-day lives as challenging, as the most painful things. Sometimes when I work with people, as I've been doing Utopia work for a while, I think people want to move towards a world where like death doesn't happen, where nothing is challenging, where we don't get into arguments, and where nobody dislikes one another, and no one even hates one another. And the reality is, Utopia still has all of those things. The difference is how we navigate them. People will always die. Death is beautiful, right? I'm a death doula, and so to me, death is like magic. It's a part of life. It's a part of every one of our stories. Injustice that leads to death is a different thing. Injustice needs to go. But death is beautiful. People can die in the most harmonious of ways. And so in a lot of the stories, we explore different concepts that are seen as really difficult, but actually are just really, really beautiful. Like that death in this book and how this character is held afterwards. That's the difference. Is that it's not a parent or loved one is dead, and now you're like, okay, I guess I get 3 days of bereavement leave, or I have to go and fill out all this paperwork, right, and try to figure this out, and all of a sudden potentially lose my house because Medicaid now wants to take the house, right? Like all these things that are not actually part of death. They're just part of systemic oppression. And I love exploring concepts like that because I think about death today. I think about the challenges today and how the way that that character was held, right? Having that grief space, having a space that is just consistent throughout your life, recognizing that grief is always happening, that's something we can have today. We don't have to wait until all systems of oppression are gone before we can move towards a world where we live and breathe these things. If you think about the relationships you have in this room, so many of them are utopic. Whether you're a parent and hopefully you're having utopic relationships with your kids, right? Whether you're just friends, family. Again, I blame Zionism for noises and things, yes. But we get to claim those things. And that to me is one of the most beautiful things with INARA is that, yes, we're not in a world where we get 100% by people around me who are building that. And we get to build it little by little. Because for me, I believe that we will get to utopia through building it day by day. It's not that we get rid of systems of oppression and magically we're in utopia. If you got rid of systems of oppression today, the vast majority of the world would not know what to do. We haven't built our relationships and our friendships and our families and communities in a way that actually allow us to thrive in that. And so for me, it's a matter of like, how do we build that today and every day? And little by little make these systems of oppression completely irrelevant. And to me, yes, maybe we can't get to 100% of it today, but like, honestly, let's get to 10 to start. Let's get to 20, let's get to 30, let's get to 40, let's get to 50, let's get to 80. And by the time we get to 90, these systems will be gone. But how many of us can say that we're at those percentages yet? And so I want to invite you to really reflect on that of how do you move your life in a way where you get to live as if you're in a free Falasteen, in a world free of systemic oppression, even with them still here. Because there's so much that we can do. So many little building blocks that we could be building and getting to where we need to go. So I'll read one final piece and then we can do some questions. All right, one sec. This book is a bit newer, and so I'm still trying to figure out where all the pages are. So it's going to be on page 128 if you have a copy with you. This one's called Musings of a Teenager. I wonder if she likes me. Does she know? I'm tangled in her curls, the humidity frizz locking me in. Mom says to ask her out. What if she does? Y'all, Zionism does not want us to, like... Wait, is this good? Okay, maybe I just can't move. Yeah, those of you that know me know that's, like, impossible for me. I speak with my hands and, like, full body movements. All right, we're going to start over. Musings of a Teenager. I wonder if she likes me. Does she know? Entangled in her curls, the humidity frizz locking me in. Mama says to ask her out. She doesn't get it. What if she does? Am I ready? 2 months from my naming ceremony. They fill my thoughts during olive harvest, beach days, as I sketch Yaffa's walls again and again, as if there's some hidden wisdom there. She smiled at me one morning. My breath catches and I can't breathe. Does anyone else ever feel this way? Baba says yes. Most people do on the romantic spectrum. I tell him he must be wrong. How could anyone function if so? He laughs, then Mama and Ren and I groan, cramps filling my heart. I know everything about her. Best friends from before the beginning. Ren says all our souls recognize each other from lives we may never remember, lived fully. I wonder if we've lived this before. I ask one day, under the shade of the fig trees overlooking the world, they smile and take my hand. It's everything then. Until their lips are on mine, and I'll wonder if maybe breathing from lungs is temporary, until lips are filled with oxygen. If I never breathe again, I'll live forever. Then her hands glide on mine, and I'm a supernova, cheesily combusting into a black hole, ? Then more. Then they're there for dinner like she normally is, and I can't stop smiling, ear to ear, wondering, is my entire being a smile? I draw her sometimes. In classes we share from my mind and lifetimes. Our first dance, the second, the third, then every day before, during, and after. We hold hands, smile, cry, as if stuck in every emotion, holding on to the one beyond them, love. There are kisses, hands held with other smiles, my skin on theirs, nourishing one another. I draw a sea of love, bodies in ecstasy connecting beyond time and space. I am there. She is there. Talking about bits and pieces of life that make us whole. Home becomes shared space between us and others. I draw them all. They farm, their fruit filling our bellies, they fill the gaps between us. Our eggs coalesce, materializing in a child that is neither of ours, yet part of everything we are. She claims Ave. They say Adam and Eve were one first. A cycle of loss and growth complete. We explore wheat fields and mentorship structures. We find their soul belongs in the sea. I follow them in, the water too cold for my lungs. I draw them to a speck so physically small in a passionate sea, yet larger than passions and seas combined. Years pass, our lives like the tides, coming in and out, but never really gone. I'm with my partner, Ave is in the distance, the sun shining down on them as if they're to leave us any minute. I smile. Wherever they go, they are magic. She's by my side, massages my fingers, strained and paint-stained, calluses lining them, mapping every day of our lives. Thank you. So, a little bit about what this experience was like for a lot of the people within it in terms of different edits and things like that. But those of you that know me, at least more recently, so much of my writing has been very autobiographical, right? It's very related to the present moment. It's related to my life. And it was so cool exploring different aspects of just other things within this book, right? Of ways that life should always be. In ways that some people get to live today. And it's something that we get to build every single day. And yet so many of us also don't have that. So many of us did not get to be teenagers, having our first crush, talking about our first crush with our families. Or even first loved ones, right? And potentially even decades later, potentially have never integrated those things. And to me, in a free Falasteen, none of that would ever be the case. That openness, that support, that love that exists beyond what these systems of oppression tell us is right and wrong and should be and shouldn't be. And less about the reactions of the people around us, and more of completely changing the circumstances that we're all raised with. I know for me, the reason I didn't tell my parents about any crushes I had was because I didn't have time for crushes. Right? Survival took over everything. Whether it was high school, whether it was my early 20s, like I didn't date anybody until my mid-20s. Because it was 4 jobs since I was like 14 and like just survival. And when you're trying to survive, you don't have time to be like, does this person like me? Does this person not like me? Or at least I didn't have that. Right? It was, wait, am I going to have housing tomorrow? And so I need to go to work and I don't have time for this. And then I'm going to the other job after the first job, and then another job, and then another job, and then no one understands that. And teachers being like, you could do better, you should quit your jobs. And I'm like, are you going to pay my rent? And they're like, no, but you should quit your jobs. Those are the circumstances I want to get rid of first and foremost. It's not that I think our families aren't able to hold us. It's that with survival, we don't have the opportunity to be able to hold each other in the same ways. Right? I was born immediately following the Gulf War. I was born immediately into displacements. My family moved from Kuwait to Jordan with absolutely nothing except what they could fit in a car. I was born a few months into that. Into a world where if we didn't take care of one another, we wouldn't survive. And I'm grateful for that because it taught me how to take care of people. It taught me how to do the work that I do. And also, though, those are the circumstances that we get to get rid of as we build a world where we are embracing one another. Where all of our experiences are experiences of actually like, we are seen, we are witnessed, we are loved. Not we are threatened from these systems and almost killed every day. And we get to build that world. So I'll wrap up with just a few thoughts, and then we'll open it up to questions, because I would love to hear y'all's questions. So like I said, I was born into a world where if my people did not take care of one another, we would not have survived. I've lived in 9 different countries. I've lived in a dozen states. I've dealt with displacement every single day of my life, to the point of I'm a displaced person who has zero roots. I didn't grow up anywhere. I don't have childhood friends. I don't have a childhood school, because we were never around long enough for any of those roots to really develop. And I don't look at that as like this really sad thing and I hate my parents or anything like that. No, I look at it as like, that taught me how to take care of people. It taught me collective care. And so the last 7 months, so much of my work has been about collective care. Most of my work since I was 17, 17 I was basically an adult. I was already on my own at that point and still doing collective care around wars, around genocide. I was in the south of Syria, north of Jordan when the Syrian revolution started. And witnessing people coming together and being a part of that, organizing people for community care, is just something I've seen my entire life. And so, with what's happening right now in Falasteen, so much of my work has been about community care, in particular for queer and trans folks. And whether it's Falasteen or Sudan or the Congo or Kashmir or West Papua or Puerto Rico or wherever, my work is specifically to do community care for queer and trans folks who are most impacted by genocide. And so all the profits from the book, from this book, from Blood Orange, which we also have copies of, that's the first book, all the prints that queer and trans folks have created, and they're absolutely beautiful, all of that goes to queer and trans folks in Palestine. And then there's a second fund that goes to queer and trans folks in the diaspora. And that one, it doesn't matter if you're Palestinian or not. If you've lost your job, you've lost your housing, you need therapy, whatever it is, there's money for that. There's a psychosocial support fund, and there's a frontline organizer fund. Collectively, between those funds, we've been able to get over $200,000 out to people. Thank you. Which is a huge number, like pre-October 7th, and it still is a huge number, and also y'all, as y'all know, the needs are so large. But one thing that we're trying to do, right, with this type of work, is also move people away from just survival and the bare minimum, which is why there's 4 different funds. Because to me, it's not a matter of, I want you to wait until everything has fallen apart, and then we can support you. I want us to be in a place where we can send queer and trans folks to get a massage whenever one is needed, instead of just being like, oh, you don't have housing? Okay, we'll help with that. Oh, but you need a massage and body work because your body is falling apart? Oh, that sounds nice. You shouldn't have been born poor. To me, it's all about that culture shift. Again, it always goes back to what is the world that we are building? And so I want to invite you all into that thinking for your own community of how do you take care of one another? How do you make sure that nobody here, no one in your community is disposable? That anybody who's impacted, y'all take care of that person, and the other person, and the other person, and the other person. And I share a lot of that because if y'all need anything, definitely feel free to reach out. But y'all, I live in Oakland. Why should you have to reach out to somebody in Oakland for support when y'all's community can get you, can be there for you? And I'll share one final thing of, so I've witnessed community care my entire life. And then I moved back to the US when I was 18 for college in Massachusetts. And it was the first time that I was like, wait, y'all don't do community care? Y'all don't know what happened to the person who's been in this room with us for the last 6 months? And they're like, oh, they burned out. And I'm like, and? No one is supporting them? And they're like, oh, we don't know what happened to them. Excuse me? And it was like, wait, how do you all how do you organize if you don't take care of each other? And so I want to put that as a reminder of, even if Falasteen is free tomorrow, y'all, we're in an election year. It is May, which means the anti-trans bills are going to skyrocket in this legislative session. We're going into June. We're going into July and August and September and October, and then November's elections. Every single one of those months is going to be worse than the last. And if we don't take care of one another, by November, none of us will be here. But I want to come back here in November and do a speaking event, and I want all of you still here. Still showing up every day for the world that we want to build, but also still here. Because how many of y'all know of people who are no longer here with us? Because most people that I used to work with in November are not really here anymore. And some I've been able to support. Zionism. Again, Zionism. They're in the walls. We've been able to counteract a lot of that with community care. But y'all, this is a much bigger thing. And so I want to invite you to think about that, of what does your community need for the next 6 months and beyond that. Because it doesn't end in November. It doesn't end with inauguration in January. Especially with y'all here. Y'all are so close to those elections and Inauguration Day. Y'all are the ones who will be organizing against Inauguration Day. And I know it's months from now, which is like a lifetime away. But if you don't take care of each other now, there won't be people left in January. And yes, others will replace them. But again, to me, I'm not here to build a world where any of you are disposable. Where I am disposable. I want to show up in January. And for me, it's a community thing to make sure I am here in January. To make sure every single one of you is here in January. So thank y'all, and we can take some questions.
I have a question. What it was like for you to work across all of the folks who were fighting for, or like producing art for this.
Yeah, that's a great question. The question is, what did it feel like to work with people across for the entirety of INARA with the different contributors? So the really cool part with INARA is that it was such a different experience with every single contributor, right? Different contributors needed different things. Some needed more support, some needed less. Some wanted more collaborative brainstorming sessions. Some wanted co-writing spaces. Others were send me all your feedback and I will rewrite something instantaneously and get it to you within hours. It was just so different between different people. I will say a part of it was stressful, right? You're working with 17 other people across different timelines, and we're trying to do this in record-breaking timelines. It's kind of unheard of to have that many contributors and have something in stores within 3 months. And also though, that process of working with people was so beautiful. And I will say, I enjoyed that process most with the people who had more drafts. Because it was you're going from point A to B to C to Z, all the way to Z. But now you're at Z. And then you had other people that, you're at point A, and then all of a sudden you're at point M, and then you're at V, and then all of a sudden you're at Z, or maybe you're at Y, right, and you kind of stay at Y. But that transformation was not as visible in those same ways. But it was just beautiful to work with people in that way. So the thing with everything that we do, and this is what I would love for people to take more into consideration. Whether you're organizing with people, whether you're an educator, right, and you're working with students, whether you are the student and you're working with educators, it doesn't matter who you are, right? It doesn't matter what you're doing in your day-to-day life. Every single interaction is a part of utopia building. And so it wasn't about, I'm going to work with this person and we're going to focus on grammar and get something grammatically perfect. And that's the purpose. It's, especially when you're thinking of utopia building, you're actually supporting people to really reroute narrow pathways to move towards building that as a daily practice. And that growth, right, that process of being able to witness people growing, let alone like the articles, it doesn't actually matter what the piece was, but it was more about the feelings that people had, right, of people being like, this is the only time I've ever enjoyed writing, right, or this is the only time I've ever been seen by someone who supported me with editing, or this is helping me move forward with different challenges that are coming up day to day because of everything else that's happening. And the really cool part of this was that, so y'all, like, this should not come as a surprise. Queer and trans Palestinians are not okay. I don't know if anybody in this room is okay, but definitely queer and trans Palestinians are not okay. And so when I talk about people losing housing and losing jobs and all of that, I'm talking about the contributors, right? I'm talking about all of us who are impacted by this. And so the beautiful part of this and doing it in the way that I was able to is, because I do one-on-one peer support with folks, right? So being able to incorporate that into it, and then also with the community care, people having access to funds where it's not a matter of like, you know, okay, so you're trying to write an article, but then you're fired the next day. And then I'm like, oh, that's cute. I'm sorry you got fired, but like, can you get it to me by Friday? Versus, oh, I'm sorry you got fired. Okay, cool. You need $2,000 for your rent? Fabulous. What is your Venmo? I'm sending it over now. Also, like, and then people are like, oh yeah, and my article is ready. To be able to do that, to just be with people in that way, where it's like, not only are we writing together and exploring this concept together, but that we actually will take care of one another in the process, that unfortunately rarely happens. So to me, by the end of this process, it was like, I don't even care if anybody reads it. I don't care if it ever sells any copies. It's not about that. The transformation that we all went through, just creating it, that to me, I was so intentional about really trying to make that as utopic as possible. And I feel like in a lot of ways we were able to do that, which I find is really beautiful. And so it felt great. And also, I will say of like, those of you that know me know that I'm involved in 17 different things. And so it was like, okay, cool. 11 a.m. one day, we sent it to the printer. I was on calls for a billion other things. And then it was like, okay, cool. We're on to the next and the next and the next. And that to me is what we're trying to get rid of. Because I want to be able to publish something, right, and work with people every single day and take time to really celebrate that. Like, I want to celebrate every single contributor, like, and like create landmarks for it, right, of like, it's such a big deal. And also, you know what, we're on to the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, because, and I feel like a lot of you probably relate to this, of that this is what happens in society when it's only a minority who truly are showing up. It means that we take on way more of the labor than we should. But we do it anyways, and it's not, and to me, I don't do it in like a, this is gonna destroy me way. I only do the things that really feed my soul. I just end up doing a lot, and I honor that and fully hold that. And also though, again, I want a world where everyone is showing up. Or at least more people are showing up. And more people are showing up. And that way, it's not just a few of us showing up for all of these different things. Like, I'm excited at some projects that are happening where other people are doing a queer Palestinian anthology, right, instead of me having to do it. And we get to do that, right? Once we build things, we set precedents. And so I hope that the next anthology that somebody else does follows similar modules and like builds off of that, and you know, and we get more time to celebrate. I feel like I said this last time I was here, of like, once this is over, once we're at a free Falasteen, I expect at least a full year of celebrations. People need to like remember all the books I've published, every talk, every plane I was on, because it's destroying my body, but we're fine with it. I expect everything to be celebrated. I will take years just celebrating. But until then, I will continue showing up. And then that also means that by the time this was at the printer, or by the time this was in stores and people actually had it, I was already done writing the next book that comes out in June. And so We're fabulous. Thank you, Eclipse. And I wasn't planning on publishing another book before the next October 7th, but y'all, we need to talk about anti-transness, Palestine, and the rise of fascism. And so in June, you get a book about that. So yay! And so, we're just moving from one thing to the other, and I'm okay with that right now, right? Because I'm here for just showing up continuously for the moment, supporting the people that I love, the people in this movement, the people that are most marginalized within our spaces, and I will do it for as long as I can, and I love and enjoy it, and I adore it, and I wouldn't trade it for anything, because I don't know if y'all have reflected on this, but y'all, can you imagine what it's like to be a person who 7 months into this, 76 years into this, a year into Sudan, multiple years into Sudan, decades into Sudan, decades into the Congo, around 75 years in Kashmir, right? Literally hundreds of years in Puerto Rico, and so on and so forth. And to be a person who can just walk by as if nothing is happening, to me, I get joy by being one of the people who shows up. Because I would not give this up for anything. I would not give up a single person that I have lost to pretend as if none of it is real. And I get joy from that, of that I get to honor my full humanity by showing up, by feeling this weight, by grieving everything my people and so many other people have experienced. And that to me is joyful. It's heavy, but I would not give it up for anything in the world to be one of those people who just walks by and pretends like nothing is wrong. Thank you for that question. Other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
I would love to hear your perspective on how we at least begin to try and remove white supremacy from our community.
Beautiful question. So the question was, how do we begin removing white supremacy from our communities? So my thing these days, especially these days, although I feel like it's been years, is that make it irrelevant. Which is never what systems of oppression want to hear, right? Systems of oppression want you to be like, oh my God, let's center white fragility again. Let's talk about this. Let's invite all the white people in. Let's explain what genocide is. Let's explain what this is and what that is and all of that. And I'm like, no, actually, let's make shit irrelevant. I'm like, if you don't believe in genocide, I want you irrelevant. Which basically means that if you're in an organization that has power over a community and you don't understand things, I want your work fully irrelevant. So I want us, as people who do get it, to go and build something that makes that irrelevant. And if you think about every single system, right, the reason systemic oppression is such a problem is because there are consequences to it. Right? If you think about every single aspect of our lives, if you think about our mental health system, our medical industrial complex, if you think about education, if you think of housing, everything, right? It all intersects with systemic oppression. And so again, my question is always, how do we make it irrelevant? And so if white people around you are going to punish you because you're showing up against genocide, let's say you're working at a company where your manager is a white person who does not get it, and it doesn't have to be a white person, right? It could be a brown person who doesn't get it. Make them irrelevant. If you build community care, I'm going to switch hands. If you go and build community care, and you're in a job where you know that your community is going to pay rent for you, if you lose this job, you can lose that job. It doesn't matter. They're irrelevant. And yes, we're talking about these really large systems, but there's so much that we can build that makes so much of what they do irrelevant. And so whatever it is, let's make them fully irrelevant. Because again, it's really the consequences that are a problem. But to me, how do we build communities where those consequences do not apply? How do we build our own mental health systems? How do we build our own housing structures? How do we build our own education systems? How do we build our own publishing houses? The things that we can do when we come together, y'all, they can't even dream of. Like Blood Orange, the first book that I talked about, I decided to write it and publish it on October 13th. It was written between October 13th and the 15th. It was published and in stores November 13th. Blood Orange has sold close to 3,500 copies. We're cute. It's true. Now, even if you were like a medium-sized book publisher, poetry books do not sell thousands of copies. If you sell like 1,000 copies, you're like a big deal in the poetry world. It's like, whoa, you just did a thing. But Blood Orange happened because community came together. Literally, like the cover of it, the orange almost looked like a pumpkin. But a friend who was visiting from Ireland, literally on the day it was going to the printer, got on YouTube, learned Photoshop, fixed it and made it look like an orange, literally minutes before it was supposed to go to print. That's what happens when we come together. INARA was written and built in a way that no publisher could do. Like they could, but they won't. Over $15,000 went to contributors in this book. That never happens. Like that doesn't even go for like the editor of an anthology. But when we come together, we can build systems instantaneously. Like Moushabeck, the org that I run, the Muslim Alliance for Sexual and Gender Diversity. Yes, thank y'all, yes. We're launching the first ever queer trans Muslim peer line. Like a fully consent-based peer line. Moushabeck went 14 months ago from a $20,000 org to a $450,000 org. Because we're amazing. It's true. Yes, all the hair. It's also slightly warm, so this is great. But like, when we come together, when we say, actually, we're not wasting time on people who don't get it, we can build everything. I can write an entire book in the time it will take me to talk to one Zionist. So I don't talk to Zionists. I don't need to. I'm like, what are you doing for me? I don't need you. Like, literally, what are you going to do? Kill me? Like, please. The state is going to try anyways. Also, I'm a death doula. It's fine. Right? Like, but that's how we make them irrelevant in every single way. We build our own spaces. We have our own conversations. We do our own work. We build out our own everything. And then, y'all, at the end of the day, we don't need them. If you think about what's happening right now, for example, like most of the people in Egypt who are supporting families on the ground are queer and trans people. Supporting all the cis straight people. Y'all, we have always been the people giving way more than we've ever received. People that are more privileged do not come to support us in the same way that we have supported them. We've always put our lives on the line. What we can build, nobody else can build. And that's why it's so critical to center the most marginalized of the most marginalized. Like, I want black-led pro-Palestine movements. And I want entirely trans-led pro-Palestine movements. And black trans-led pro-Palestine movements. And disabled black trans-led movement. Like, all the things, but it's always the most marginalized. Not even that knows. We're the ones who know how to. Right? Like, what we've built for queer and trans Palestinians and other queer and trans folks impacted by genocide, orgs that are enormous can't do. They don't know how, because they've never had to do it to survive. Whereas, like I said, for me, community care was day one, right? You learn how to support one another and all of that, and that's been my introduction into how to make these systems irrelevant. Because these systems are never going to show up for us. They're always going to try to kill us. So might as well just do whatever you want. And they try to kill us, but they're going to try to kill us anyways. So just become a death doula and then you'll be fine with it. Is the moral. Yeah. Thank you for that question. Other questions?
Just a small one. In talking about death, it took a long time for me to get to that feeling of like death being something. What do you want to, not necessarily, I guess, but be seen through
Ooh, that's such a good question. Like when I die, what you all like would see? Honestly, I tell people that when I am assassinated, listen. Listen, everything's about strategy. Anyways, what I tell people is that, listen, I'm not here to say I want to be assassinated. All I'm saying is that it is a possibility. The state comes after us in every single way, right? And I would love for us to just acknowledge these things, right? And like, I fully processed it. And so I tell people that when I die, whatever that looks like, however I died, I expect them, if capitalism's still around, I expect people to go and fundraise immensely, not even for causes. I just want my people to have a bunch of money, because they'll already take care of one another. I basically want a riot, if y'all are up for it, if like capitalism is still around and these systems are still around. That's what I want to be remembered as, to be honest. But beyond that, to be honest, like I don't need to be remembered. Like I am also good with just like disappearing from the world and just disappearing from everything, because I want to leave a world that doesn't have these systems of oppression, and we don't have to think back to like the things that I did or other people did and all that you all did. I want people to move on. I want the world to move on. Like, I'll be in everything. I'll be in the waves. If I'm going to be in anything, I'll be in waves. I'll be in the water, right? Like the Mediterranean in particular. And also, to me, it's like, it just, I'm here for a limited period of time, whatever that looks like, and then I won't be here. And that to me is beautiful, right? And so every day I show up as if today is the last. And then that allows me to go to sleep every single night. And I normally will sleep 8 hours a day, although I had a slumber party like the last weekend somehow after an action. Y'all, organizers are wild. We go from an action like attacking GLAD to all of a sudden now it's a slumber party, but whatever. We're here for it, yes. It was magic. Exactly, yes. And we do that and like on the streets, and then we're like, yes, let's have a slumber party and like try to watch like West Side Story at 5 a.m., but everyone's already passed out like 10 minutes in, and I had never seen it. And I was like, do they know how gay this is? But whatever. But I'm here for us to just be, right? To just live every day. And then what happens beyond that. Whether people remember me is beyond me. And to be honest, for a long time, the thing about death that I hadn't fully accepted is how within the world that we live in, within systemic oppression, our death as black and brown people, as Palestinians, gets weaponized against our people. Right? We get watered down to all of a sudden we have streets named after us that mean nothing. And so for a long time, that was what I was afraid of. Not that I'm such a big deal, they're gonna name streets after me, but it's more of like, I really don't want them to in the world that we live in. Because it means that they will name things and days and rob us of even our deaths. And also, where I am now is that I don't control what happens after my death. All I control is what happens today. And tomorrow, and the day after while I breathe, and then it's somebody else's problem. So y'all, if they hijack my death, y'all know what to do. I don't think I'm legally allowed to tell you to explore fire more, but I'm gonna say it anyways. Fire exploration is just tapping into the elements, is all I'm gonna say.
One more question?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, we were told to vote for the
That's a great question. So the question was, what do you do elections-wise when everyone's evil? I always go back to make them as irrelevant as possible, right? We know that no matter who wins, genocide continues. We know whoever wins, anti-trans legislation continues. We know whoever wins, fascism is actually still going to be on the rise, because we know that neither party is actually doing anything. Some will say that one party means that it's going to move quicker than the other one, but ultimately, both parties are moving us towards the exact same direction, right? Whether it's the lesser evil, the more evil, the result is the same. The destination that we are heading to is the same. None of us control the timelines. But again, I go into make them irrelevant, right? If Biden wins next November, how do we make sure that the harm that Biden can bring again is irrelevant? If Trump gets into office, again, how do we make Trump irrelevant? We know what Trump is trying to do, right? We know what the right wing is trying to do. We know what the Democrats are trying to do, right? Have y'all heard of Plan 2025? Project 2025? These people, I can't even get their names straight. But like, Project 2025, like we know exactly what they want to do. We know exactly who they want to weaponize. We know how they want to weaponize us. Again, how do you just make them irrelevant? Like, we know that they're going to weaponize trans people against our communities. We know they're going to try it again and again and again. We know that they're moving fascism forward through that. We know that our communities also have our own challenges in different ways, but we know that they're susceptible to that because of how infiltrated we have been over generations, because of how colonization has changed our own cultures. How do we make that as irrelevant as possible? Part of the reason that the helpline, the peer line that Meshad is doing came, it actually wasn't birthed post-October 7th. We were planning to do it way before that. Because we knew every single year, the right wing, the conservatives, whoever you want to call, whoever it is, are always going to come after us. And when they come after us, we know that people die. And so to us, it was like, how do we make that irrelevant? And part of that is creating an accessible space that people always have access to. And it's just one thing, right? But what if we had 20, 30, 40, 50 things? What if every single community had the things that they needed? What if we know that whoever gets into office in November, well, technically in January, right, of like knowing that they're going to come after black and brown people, how do we make sure that, like, as brown people, that we're fully supportive of black community, of indigenous community out here? How do we make sure that we're supportive of trans community members, specifically global majority trans community members, who we know we will be killed first? How do we make those things irrelevant? When we understand that there's like the school to prison pipeline, how do we make schools irrelevant in the ways that they operate? How do we build our own things? And it sounds like we're trying to build a lot of things, y'all. And sure, it is a lot of things. But again, when we come together, the things that we can build in months, they can't build in decades. Decades. And within just my own life, I've witnessed countless times of our people coming together to do things that are seen so impossible. The Queer and Trans Palestine and other people work is an example of that. But also, every single area of work that I've done is an example of that. And I'm one person. So imagine the stories you all have. Like when COVID happened, y'all mutual aid groups launched so fast. I was in Connecticut at the time. I'll do like a final story for this question. I was in Connecticut at the time. Not a great place to be. Don't go to Connecticut. Avoid at all costs. Anyways. And I was in Jordan when COVID started, because I was in Jordan like a few days prior visiting family, and I got stuck in Jordan for months. From Jordan, from literally 7,000 miles away, I organized a statewide mutual aid network called Connecticut Mutual Aid. We launched 13 mutual aid groups. We moved $2 million within 6 months, but within 2 weeks of the start of COVID, we were feeding 40,000 people, because I had mobilized 6,000 people in the state. We did that in 2 weeks. Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing, and also, y'all, that's normal for us. I mean, maybe not normal, but like, we're amazing. The things that we can do are so exceptional. And part of the reason that we were able to move that fast is because everybody realized our survival is tied together because no one knew what was coming. And everybody in a room like this, although 6,000 people in virtual rooms, literally ended up listening to somebody 7,000 miles away, but they didn't know that. And so their ableism did not get in the way of that. And people worked together. By the time Biden got into office, by the time Biden won, 12 out of those 13 groups were dead. I had moved to Ireland by then, so it was other people. But like, the things that we can build are immense, and they know, and so they will do everything to try to tear it apart. But the building part, what we can do is incredible. Because the reality is, all these systems of oppression have tried to kill all of us for hundreds of years, and yet look how fabulous we look. And we are. And I know it's not all about looks, but like, y'all, like, have you met this hair? Like, they have tried destroying this hair, and they have not. We are still here. We're still producing the greatest of things. We're still doing things in ways that they're like, wait, you did what? That's our magic. That's what we get to bring to one another within our own communities. And so to me, when y'all want to do things, you will do things. You can literally jump into things. The hard part is not allowing systems to destroy it from the inside out and from the outside in. And they will try, and they will try, and they will try. And to me, the way that we actually like combat fascism and all these systems of oppression is through care work. Because with community care, you can reverse all of it. Because in a world where you're disposable, we're always going to be moving towards fascism. But in communities where nobody is disposable, fascism can never actually take hold. And so I want to move our communities into more of that. We're already doing such beautiful things. We have the skill sets to do the most beautiful of things. It's just a matter of actually just moving into them. And sometimes being like, actually, I don't know what I'm doing. Who can do this within community? And allowing people to do it. Asking someone from Oakland, right, where I live, and being like, hey, we want to build community care. Can you help us build out community care for the elections? Well, we know our people are going to get fired in the next several months. We're going to lose housing. You're going to have food insecurity. You're going to have every single problem that's ever existed in the next several months. This and the last several decades have been our time to build for that. And it's never too late. And so tomorrow's still the day, and the day after, and the day after, and the day after. But again, whatever happens with the elections, let's be prepared for us. Because again, no matter who's in office, the way this country is structured is that we will always move towards fascism. That's what this country was birthed for. It is in line with its inspirations to always move in those directions. So how do we make sure that we take care of one another and make that as irrelevant as possible? Oh, Zionism. But they failed. Y'all still heard me. Absolutely, a free Falasteen is totally going to happen. Falasteen will totally be at peace and totally free. And not only Falasteen, but I wholeheartedly believe that indigenous sovereignty will be a reality everywhere. Thank you. That was a good question. Thank you. Yeah.